My wife died 15 years ago, yet every month I sent my greedy daughter-in-law $1,000 for her debts. For 15 long years I sacrificed, froze in winter, while she lived in luxury. Then the bank called. Sir, there were never any debts. I smiled, drove to their house, and what I saw there left me speechless. Now this betrayer will face real consequences. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Harold Patterson. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a modest apartment on Vine Street in Cincinnati, Ohio. For 38 years, I worked as a chief accountant at a manufacturing company. Numbers were my life. I could spot a discrepancy in a spreadsheet faster than most people could find their keys. Now I'm retired, spending my days hunting for vintage jazz vinyl at flea markets. I always believed that if you treat people fairly, they'll do the same for you. Turns out that's the kind of thinking that gets you robbed by your own family. Let me tell you about my son Daniel and his wife Melissa. Daniel is 42 now. When he was a boy, he used to sit on my lap while I explained how compound interest worked. He'd look at me like I was teaching him magic. We were close back then. He called me every Sunday without fail, told me about his week, asked for advice. That was before Melissa. She came into our lives 16 years ago. I remember the first dinner she attended at our house. She complimented my late wife's cooking 3 times, helped clear the dishes without being asked, and laughed at all my terrible jokes. She had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. My wife pulled me aside that night and whispered, "She's trying too hard." I dismissed it. Women being competitive, I thought. How blind can one man be? Melissa and Daniel got married a year later. The changes came slowly at first. Daniel started missing our Sunday calls. "Work's crazy, Dad." Then our monthly dinners became quarterly. "Melissa's not feeling well." Then my birthday became a card in the mail instead of a visit. The traffic from Mason is brutal, you understand. I understood nothing. 15 years ago, my wife passed away. The house on Oakwood Drive felt too big, too empty. So I made Daniel an offer. I'd transfer the house to him in a living trust, move to a smaller apartment, and he'd take care of the property, keep it in the family. He cried when I handed him the papers. "I'll make you proud, Dad." Melissa stood behind him, and I swear I saw something flicker in her eyes. At the time I thought it was gratitude. 3 months after I moved out, Melissa called me. Her voice trembled like she was holding back tears. "Harold, I'm so embarrassed to ask this. I have student loans from nursing school. $47,000. The interest is killing us. Daniel doesn't know I'm calling you. He'd be mortified, but we're drowning. What kind of father-in-law would I be if I refused? How much do you need monthly? Would $1,000 be too much? Just until we get back on our feet?" $1,000 a month. I did the math automatically. At that rate, she'd be debt-free in 4 years, maybe 5 with interest. I could manage that. "Consider it done, sweetheart." "You're an angel, Harold. A true angel." Every month for 15 years I transferred $1,000 to the account she gave me. Every month I ate cheaper groceries, skipped the heating some winter nights, and talked myself out of buying that rare Miles Davis pressing I'd been eyeing for years. Every month I told myself I was helping my family. Last Tuesday, I called First National Ohio about a CD that was maturing. The representative, a chatty young woman named Brittany, pulled up my account. "Mr. Patterson, I see you've been making regular transfers to this external account for quite some time. 15 years, actually." "That's dedication." "It's for my daughter-in-law's student loans," I said. There was a pause, keyboard clicking. "Sir, I'm looking at the receiving account information, and I don't see any debt obligations linked to it. Actually, it's flagged as a standard savings account. There's never been any loan debt associated with this account holder." I asked her to repeat that. She did, twice. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen for an hour. My coffee went cold. Then I did what any accountant would do. I pulled out my files. 15 years of bank statements. I added up every transfer, double-checked my math, then checked it again. $180,000. I drove to Mason that afternoon. 25 minutes on E71, plenty of time to rehearse what I'd say. But when I turned onto Oakwood Drive, the words died in my throat. The house where I'd raised my son was gone. In its place stood something that belonged in a magazine. New stone facade, expanded garage, professional landscaping with those designer bushes that cost more than furniture. I parked across the street and watched. The garage door opened, and Melissa pulled out in a white BMW X5. Behind her I could see a second one, black, his and hers. I walked around the side of the property. Through the new wrought iron fence, I could see the backyard. They'd installed an in-ground pool with a waterfall feature. A hot tub steamed in the corner. The old oak tree where Daniel had his tire swing was gone, cut down to make room for a cabana. $180,000. That's exactly how much I had sent over 15 years, and now I was staring at where every single dollar had actually gone. I drove home slowly, my hands steady on the wheel. The shaking would come later, I knew. For now, I was doing calculations in my head. 15 years of transfers. The house I'd given them in good faith. The trust documents I'd signed. The phone calls I'd believed. The lies I'd swallowed like vitamins. Funny thing about being an accountant for almost 4 decades, you learn that numbers tell stories, and the story my numbers were telling me was one of deliberate, systematic theft by the 2 people I trusted most in this world. I parked in my apartment complex and sat in the car as the sun went down. $180,000. That's what my love and trust had been worth to them. The question now was simple. What was I going to do about it? The morning after my visit to Oakwood Drive, I woke up at 4:47 a.m., old habits. For 38 years, I started every workday before dawn, reviewing figures while the office was quiet. Now I had different figures to review. I made coffee and spread every bank statement across my kitchen table. 15 years of records, sorted by year, then by month. Most people would find this tedious. I found it therapeutic. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't make excuses. Numbers don't look you in the eye and call you an angel while picking your pocket. By noon, I had built a complete financial profile of my transfers to Melissa. $1,000 every single month for 180 months. I'd never missed one, not when I needed new tires, not when my refrigerator died, not when I had to choose between the heating bill and groceries that one February. I remembered that February clearly. Daniel had called to wish me happy birthday. A rare occurrence by then. "How are you doing, Dad? Keeping warm?" I'd told him I was fine, just fine. That night, I'd slept in 3 sweaters because I couldn't afford to run the furnace after making Melissa's transfer. I remembered thinking how proud I was to help them through their struggles. Their struggles. In a house with a pool and 2 BMWs, something else nagged at me. The house itself. I transferred it to Daniel through a living trust, which meant I should still have certain rights. I kept copies of all the original documents. That's what accountants do. We keep copies of everything. I found my attorney's contact from years ago, but he'd retired. A few calls later, I had an appointment with Patrick Murray, an estate and real property lawyer on Walnut Street downtown. Murray was a serious man in his mid-50s with gray at his temples and no patience for small talk. Good. I wasn't in the mood for small talk either. "Let me see the original trust documents," he said after I'd explained the situation. I handed over my copies. He studied them for 20 minutes without speaking. Then he turned to his computer and started typing. "Mr. Patterson, when did you last verify your name on the property deed?" "I haven't. Why would I? I set up the trust 15 years ago." More typing, more frowning. Then he turned his screen toward me. "According to Hamilton County records, the property at 847 Oakwood Drive was transferred out of the living trust 8 years ago Full ownership now belongs to Daniel and Melissa Patterson jointly. The transfer was authorized by a power of attorney document. I never signed a power of attorney. There's one on file. He clicked to another page. With your signature, dated 8 years ago. I looked at the document on his screen. There was my name, Harold J. Patterson, in handwriting that looked almost like mine. Almost. The J was wrong. I'd learned cursive from my father, who had learned it from his father. Our family makes the J with a distinctive loop. This J was flat, generic. That's a forgery, I said quietly. Murray leaned back in his chair. If what you're telling me is true, we're looking at multiple felonies. Forgery, fraud, theft by deception, elder financial abuse. Ohio takes these charges very seriously. Good. Before we proceed, I need to warn you. These are your son and daughter-in-law. Family cases get ugly. They get public. Are you certain you want to pursue this? I thought about my wife's face when she warned me about Melissa 16 years ago. I thought about Daniel crying when I gave him the house. I thought about $180,000 and 3 sweaters in February. Mr. Murray, I didn't spend 38 years catching financial discrepancies to let the biggest fraud of my life go unpunished just because the perpetrators share my last name. He nodded slowly. Then we're going to need evidence. Bank records, communications, anything that shows a pattern. And I'd recommend hiring an investigator. Someone who can dig deeper than public records. That afternoon, I met Rachel Webb in a coffee shop near her office. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Former police detective, she told me, left the force to go private after she got tired of bureaucracy, letting criminals slip through cracks. Tell me everything, she said. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems unimportant. I talked for 2 hours. She took notes, asked questions, and didn't interrupt my answers. When I finished, she closed her notebook. Mr. Patterson, in my experience, people who commit fraud once usually don't stop. If your daughter-in-law forged a power of attorney 8 years ago, she's probably done other things too. I'll start with public records, then work my way into the financial background. Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks. After 15 years of being played for a fool, I could wait 2 more weeks. 4 days later, my phone rang. It was Melissa. Harold, how are you? We've been thinking about you. Her voice was honey and sunshine, same as always. I'm fine, Melissa. Listen, I hate to ask, but we have a situation. Daniel needs a minor surgery. Nothing serious, but our insurance won't cover all of it. Do you think you could help with $5,000? Just this once? I closed my eyes. $5,000? Just this once. How many times had I heard variations of this request? The car that broke down, the unexpected tax bill, the home repair emergency. Always urgent, always tearful, always followed by promises that things would get better soon. No. Silence on the other end. 3 full seconds. I'm sorry, did you say no? That's what I said. Harold, I don't think you understand. Daniel needs surgery. Your son. This is a medical emergency. Then I'm sure the hospital will work out a payment plan. They usually do. Her voice changed. The honey curdled. Are you feeling all right, Harold? This isn't like you. Maybe Daniel should come check on you. I'm feeling better than I have in 15 years, actually. Was there anything else? More silence. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone entirely. You know, Harold, we've always looked out for you. Visited you. Called you. Made sure you weren't lonely. And this is how you repay us? Melissa, in 15 years you've visited me exactly 11 times. I counted. Daniel has called me on approximately 30 occasions outside of asking for money. I counted that too. Would you like me to send you the spreadsheet? She hung up without saying goodbye. I set my phone down and looked out the window at the Cincinnati skyline. For the first time in 15 years I had said no to Melissa Patterson, and in her voice, underneath the anger and indignation, I had heard something new. Fear. She should be afraid, because the same mind that had tracked every dollar, every call, and every lie for 15 years was now fully awake. And it was done, being generous. The invitation arrived 3 days after my phone call with Melissa. A family dinner, she called it. We haven't all been together in so long, Harold. It would mean the world to us. Her voice dripped with sweetness, but I could hear the calculation underneath. She was regrouping, planning something. I accepted. Know your enemy, as they say. The dinner was at their house. My house, technically, though I was beginning to understand that technicalities meant nothing to Melissa Patterson. When I pulled up to 847 Oakwood Drive, I counted 6 cars in the driveway and along the street. She'd assembled an audience. Inside, I recognized faces from Daniel's side of the family. His cousin Marcus and his wife. An aunt I hadn't seen in years. 2 couples I didn't know, probably Melissa's friends. They all greeted me with that particular kind of warmth, people reserve for the elderly, a mixture of politeness and pity. Melissa floated through the room in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She kissed my cheek and squeezed my hands. So glad you could make it, Harold. We've been worried about you. The performance had begun. Dinner was elaborate, catered from the look of it. Melissa didn't cook, I remembered. Too busy managing their finances, she always said. I almost laughed at the memory. The wine flowed freely, though I noticed my glass was refilled more often than anyone else's, trying to loosen the old man's tongue, perhaps. Or make him look confused. The trap sprang during dessert. You know, Melissa said, setting down her fork with theatrical concern. I've been so worried about Harold lately. He called me last week and seemed so confused. Couldn't remember our conversation from the day before. I hadn't called her. We both knew that. And he's been making strange decisions with his money, she continued, her voice dropping to a confidential murmur that somehow carried to every corner of the table. Refusing to help his own son with medical expenses. Daniel needed surgery, and Harold just said no. Out of nowhere. Heads turned toward me. Sympathetic glances, concerned frowns. It's so hard watching someone decline, Melissa sighed. Especially someone we love so much. Daniel sat beside her, staring at his plate. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My son, the man I'd raised, sitting silently while his wife painted me as a senile fool. Actually, I said, keeping my voice mild, I remember our conversation perfectly. You asked for $5,000 for Daniel's surgery. I asked which hospital. You hung up. Melissa's smile flickered. See. He's confused. There was no surgery, Harold. I was asking about something else entirely. Interesting. You just said Daniel needed surgery. Silence. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The poor dear, Melissa recovered smoothly, patting my hand. This is exactly what I mean. Memory lapses, confusion. We might need to consider options for his care. I let her finish. Let her plant her seeds of doubt. Then I thanked everyone for a lovely evening and drove home. The next morning, Rachel Webb called with her report. Mr. Patterson, I found something significant. Your daughter-in-law has a bank account in the Cayman Islands. Current balance is $89,000. I wrote down the number. $89,000. Almost half of what I'd sent her over 15 years, squirreled away in an offshore account. Probably earning interest while I wore 3 sweaters in February. There's more, Rachel continued. I pulled the property transfer documents from Hamilton County records. The power of attorney that authorized the transfer from your living trust? I had a forensic document examiner look at it. He's prepared to testify that the signature is inconsistent with your authentic handwriting samples. Specifically, there are multiple points of divergence in the letter formations. Forgery. Documented, provable forgery. Thank you, Rachel. Send everything to Patrick Murray's office. I met with Murray that afternoon. He spread the documents across his conference table, and nodded slowly as he reviewed them. "This is solid," he said. "We have the fraudulent transfer, the forged power of attorney, the fabricated debt story, and now offshore assets. I can file a civil suit for fraud, conversion, and elder financial abuse. We might also be looking at criminal referral for the forgery." "Do it." "There's one more thing," Murray said. "I received a call this morning from a family law attorney. Melissa Patterson has filed a petition with the probate court to have you declared legally incompetent. She's claiming dementia and decision-making impairment. She wants to be appointed as your guardian." I stared at him. The audacity was almost impressive. She wasn't just trying to keep my money. She was trying to take control of everything I had left. Can she do that? She can try. These cases require medical evidence. She'll need doctors to testify about your mental state. I'll get my own evaluations. Get 3 different specialists. Document everything about your daily functioning. We'll need to prove competency beyond any doubt. I drove home through Cincinnati traffic, my mind working through the implications. Melissa had declared war. She'd publicly humiliated me, questioned my sanity, and now she was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. If she succeeded, she would control my finances, my healthcare decisions, my entire life. But she'd made a mistake. She'd assumed the old accountant was too slow, too trusting, too worn down to fight back. She wanted a war. Fine. I had spent 38 years finding financial crimes hidden in spreadsheets and buried in ledgers, finding them and documenting them until there was nowhere left to hide. It was time to use those skills for myself. The competency hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the Hamilton County Probate Court. I arrived 45 minutes early, wearing my best suit. Murray met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "How are you feeling?" "Like a man who's been accused of losing his mind by the person who stole his money." "So, motivated." Melissa swept in 15 minutes later with Daniel trailing behind her. She wore a conservative navy dress and a concerned expression. Behind them came 3 women I recognized from the dinner party. Her witnesses. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Patricia Holloway presided, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who looked like she'd heard every lie imaginable and had run out of patience for them years ago. Melissa's attorney went first. He was young, polished, and expensive-looking. He painted a picture of a confused, elderly man making erratic financial decisions, refusing to help family members, displaying memory problems, and behaving aggressively at family gatherings. Then came the witnesses. The first woman, Jennifer, described how I'd seemed lost at the dinner party. He couldn't follow conversations. He got dates mixed up. It was heartbreaking. The second, a woman named Deborah, claimed I'd once called Melissa by the wrong name. He called her Margaret, his late wife's name. He didn't even realize I had never in my life called anyone Margaret. My wife's name was Catherine. The third witness was the most theatrical. She wiped tears from her eyes as she described her own father's dementia. The signs are identical. The confusion, the paranoia, the financial mistakes. This poor man needs protection. When they finished, Judge Holloway turned to Murray. "Response?" Murray stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence regarding Mr. Patterson's cognitive function." He called Dr. Harrison Chen, a neuropsychologist from the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. Dr. Chen had administered a comprehensive cognitive evaluation 3 days earlier. The results were unambiguous. Mr. Patterson scored in the 94th percentile for his age group on memory tests. His executive function is excellent. His verbal reasoning is superior. I found no evidence of cognitive impairment whatsoever. Melissa's face remained composed, but I saw her fingers tighten on her purse. Murray called 2 more experts. A psychiatrist who had evaluated me for depression and anxiety, finding neither. A geriatric specialist who had conducted a physical examination and reviewed my medical history. All 3 agreed. Harold Patterson was cognitively intact, mentally competent, and fully capable of managing his own affairs. Then, Murray changed direction. Your Honor, we'd also like to present evidence relevant to the motivation behind this petition. He handed documents to the judge and opposing counsel. A 47-page financial analysis I had prepared myself, tracking every transfer to Melissa's account over 15 years. Bank statements, the forged power of attorney, the forensic examiner's report, documentation of the offshore account. Mr. Patterson has discovered that his daughter-in-law has been systematically defrauding him for 15 years, Murray said. $180,000 in transfers based on fabricated student loan debt. A forged power of attorney used to transfer real property worth approximately $340,000. An offshore account containing $89,000 of misappropriated funds. This competency petition appears to be an attempt to silence Mr. Patterson before he can pursue legal remedies. Judge Holloway studied the documents. The courtroom was silent. Melissa's attorney tried to object, calling the evidence irrelevant to the competency question. The judge overruled him. The motivation of the petitioner is absolutely relevant when evaluating the credibility of a guardianship request, she said. When she looked up, her expression had hardened. I've reviewed the medical evidence. 3 independent specialists have found Mr. Patterson to be fully competent. The petitioner has presented witness testimony that, frankly, contradicts the expert findings entirely. She paused. The petition for guardianship is denied. Melissa's composure cracked. Her face went pale. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Furthermore, Judge Holloway continued, the court finds sufficient grounds to issue a temporary restraining order, preserving the status quo of all disputed assets, pending resolution of related civil matters. This includes the property at 847 Oakwood Drive and all financial accounts held by Daniel and Melissa Patterson. Daniel's head snapped up. Wait, our accounts? All accounts, Mr. Patterson, effective immediately. I watched Melissa turn to Daniel, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She grabbed his arm and whispered something sharp. He pulled away, shaking his head. As we filed out of the courtroom, I passed within 3 feet of my daughter-in-law. She stared at me like she was seeing someone new, someone she hadn't expected. Harold, she said, her voice low and tight, you have no idea what you started. I stopped, looked at her, kept my voice pleasant. Melissa, I spent 38 years finding people who thought they were smarter than the numbers. They never were. You're not going to be the exception. Her jaw clenched. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no smooth reply, no charming deflection, just cold rage behind her eyes. I walked out into the afternoon sunlight. Murray fell into step beside me. That went well, he said. It's not over. That was just the preliminary bout. No. But now she knows what she's dealing with. I thought about the look on her face, the surprise, the anger, the first flicker of fear. She had finally understood that her father-in-law was not just an old fool with a checkbook. And now, with her assets frozen and her fraud exposed, she had nowhere left to run. The civil trial began on a Monday morning, 6 weeks after my competency hearing victory. The same Hamilton County Courthouse, a different courtroom, much higher stakes. This wasn't about whether I could manage my own affairs. This was about $180,000, a $340,000 house, and 15 years of calculated betrayal. Murray had prepared meticulously. Our witness list included Rachel Webb, the forensic document examiner, a financial crimes expert, and one surprise that Melissa didn't see coming. The courtroom was fuller this time. Word had spread. A local reporter sat in the back row, notebook open. Melissa's attorney, the same polished young man from before, looked less confident. His client's failed competency gambit had damaged their credibility before the trial even started. Murray opened with the timeline, 15 years of transfers, documented month by month. Bank statements projected on a screen for the judge and gallery to see. $1,000 every single month to an account Melissa claimed was for student loan payments. Your Honor, the receiving account has never had any debt obligations attached to it. It was opened 3 months before the first transfer, specifically to receive Mr. Patterson's money. It was never connected to any educational institution, any loan servicer, or any debt of any kind. Melissa sat rigid in her chair, her jaw tight. Rachel Webb took the stand next. She walked the court through her investigation. The offshore account in the Caymans, the forged power of attorney, the paper trail that showed systematic asset extraction over more than a decade. The offshore account was opened 4 years ago, Rachel testified. Deposits were made in cash, making them difficult to trace. However, the timing of these deposits correlates directly with periods when Mrs. Patterson made additional requests to Mr. Patterson for emergency funds beyond the standard monthly payment. I remembered those requests. The car that broke down, the roof that needed repair, the medical emergency. Each time I'd sent extra. Each time, apparently, it had ended up in the Caymans. Then came the forensic document examiner, Dr. Leonard Price. He projected the forged power of attorney onto the screen and methodically identified 17 points where the signature diverged from my authentic handwriting. The formation of the capital H is inconsistent. The loop pattern in the lowercase letters shows different pen pressure. Most significantly, the J in the middle initial uses a flat serif rather than the curved loop present in all authenticated samples of Mr. Patterson's signature. The flat J, the same detail I'd noticed in Murray's office months ago, now documented, analyzed, and presented as evidence of forgery. But the moment that cracked Melissa's composure came from an unexpected witness. Dorothy Snyder lived 3 doors down from my old house on Oakwood Drive. She was 71, recently widowed, and she'd known my family for decades. Murray had found her during his research, and what she'd heard had made her eager to testify. Mrs. Snyder, Murray said, can you describe what you overheard approximately 2 years ago at 847 Oakwood Drive? Dorothy adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Melissa. I was walking my dog past their house. The windows were open, and I heard Melissa talking to a friend on the patio. They were laughing about something. What did you hear? Melissa said, and I remember this clearly because it shocked me. She said, the old man is so stupid he's been paying my fake debts for years. I told him I had student loans, and he just writes checks every month like a trained seal. The courtroom went silent. She called him a trained seal. Those were her exact words. Then she laughed and said something about how she'd never worked so little for so much money in her life. I watched Melissa's face. The color drained from it, then flooded back in an angry flush. Her hands gripped the table edge so hard her knuckles went white. But the final blow came from a source none of us expected. Daniel. Murray had subpoenaed him as a witness. He'd been listed as a hostile witness, someone we expected to support his wife. But something had changed in the weeks since the competency hearing. Maybe it was the frozen accounts. Maybe it was watching his wife's schemes unravel. Maybe it was something else entirely. Mr. Patterson, Murray asked, were you aware that your wife was receiving monthly payments from your father? Daniel looked at Melissa. She shook her head slightly, a warning. He looked away. Yes. Were you aware that these payments were based on a fabricated story about student loan debt? A longer pause. Melissa's attorney objected, was overruled. Yes, Daniel said quietly. I knew. And the power of attorney that transferred your father's house out of the living trust. Did you witness that signature? Daniel's voice cracked. There was nothing to witness. Dad never signed it. Melissa practiced his handwriting for weeks. I watched her do it. Melissa erupted. She shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. You pathetic coward! After everything I did for us, you're going to sit there and, Mrs. Patterson, sit down, the judge ordered. He's lying. He's trying to save himself. Mrs. Patterson, if you don't sit down immediately, I will have you removed and held in contempt." Melissa's attorney pulled her back into her seat. She was shaking, her careful facade completely shattered. She turned to Daniel with an expression of pure venom. "I will destroy you for this," she hissed, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Daniel didn't respond. He just sat in the witness chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The judge called a recess. As the courtroom emptied, I remained in my seat, watching Melissa confer frantically with her lawyer. Her hands were trembling. Her voice was too loud, too desperate. Murray sat down beside me. "Daniel's testimony changes everything. He just confessed to being a co-conspirator and implicated her directly in the forgery." "Why did he do it?" His lawyer probably advised him. "Cooperating witnesses get lighter sentences. He's choosing survival over loyalty." I thought about that. My son choosing survival. He'd always been good at that, at choosing the path of least resistance, the option that kept him comfortable, even if it meant betraying people who loved him. Card houses. That's what Melissa had built. Layers of lies stacked on top of each other, looking impressive from the outside, but fundamentally fragile. All it took was one card to shift, and the whole structure came down. And now, watching her face as her husband testified against her, I was seeing exactly how card houses fall. First slowly, one piece at a time, then, all at once. The verdict came 3 weeks later. Judge Harrison, who had presided over the civil trial, delivered his ruling on a Thursday afternoon. The courtroom was packed. The local newspaper had picked up the story, and suddenly everyone wanted to see how it ended. I sat in the front row, with Murray beside me. Across the aisle, Melissa sat alone. Daniel had stopped attending after his testimony. Their marriage, like everything else she'd built, had collapsed. "In the matter of Patterson versus Patterson," the judge began, "the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Harold J. Patterson, on all counts." I heard Melissa inhale sharply. "The evidence demonstrates a clear pattern of fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. The defendant, Melissa Patterson, knowingly and deliberately obtained $180,000 from the plaintiff through false pretenses over a period of 15 years. Additionally, the defendant forged the plaintiff's signature on a power of attorney document to illegally transfer real property valued at $340,000. The judge looked directly at Melissa. She wouldn't meet his eyes. The court orders the following remedies. First, the property at 847 Oakwood Drive is to be returned to Harold J. Patterson as sole owner. The fraudulent transfer is hereby voided. Second, Melissa Patterson is ordered to pay restitution of $180,000 plus interest, totaling $197,400. Third, the defendant is ordered to pay punitive damages of $50,000. Fourth, all funds in the offshore account identified during discovery, totaling $89,000, are to be seized and applied toward the restitution amount. Melissa made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court is referring this matter to the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office for potential criminal charges, including forgery, theft by deception, and elder financial abuse under Ohio Revised Code sections. He set down his papers. Court is adjourned. Melissa sat frozen in her chair as the courtroom began to empty. Her face was gray. She looked like someone who had just watched her entire life burn to the ground. Her attorney was speaking to her, but she didn't seem to hear him. I stood up slowly. Murray shook my hand, but I barely registered it. I was watching Melissa. 15 years. She'd stolen 15 years of my trust, my money, my relationship with my son. She'd called me a trained SEAL. She'd tried to have me declared incompetent so she could keep stealing. And now she was sitting in a courtroom, alone, facing financial ruin and potential prison time, and there was nothing she could do about it. I walked toward the exit. As I passed her row, she looked up. "Harold," her voice was hoarse. "Harold, please, we can work something out. I'll pay you back. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't let them prosecute me." I stopped, looked at her. This woman who had smiled at me for 15 years while emptying my bank account. Who had convinced my son to forge my signature. Who had tried to steal my freedom, along with my money. "Melissa," I said quietly, "you spent 15 years treating me like an ATM with a pulse. You called me stupid. You laughed about how easy it was to fool me. And when I finally figured it out, you tried to have me locked away." I paused. "Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" She opened her mouth to respond. I didn't wait to hear it. I walked out of the courtroom and into the afternoon sunlight. The house on Oakwood Drive was returned to me the following month. Walking through the front door felt strange. The layout was the same, but everything else had changed. The walls were different colors. The furniture was all new, expensive, and not to my taste. The kitchen had been completely renovated, but it was mine again. I spent the first week doing inventory. Most of my belongings had been disposed of years ago. Furniture I'd built with my own hands, gone. Family photographs, stored in a damp corner of the garage and ruined by mold. The stamp collection my father had left me, sold at a garage sale according to a neighbor. Then I went into the basement. In the far corner behind some boxes of Christmas decorations, I found them. Cardboard boxes, taped shut, with "Trash Donate" written on the side in Melissa's handwriting. I opened the first one. My vinyl records. Hundreds of them. Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, the collection I'd spent decades building, album by album, flea market by flea market. Melissa had boxed them up, labeled them as garbage, and apparently never gotten around to actually throwing them out. I sat on the basement floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes, holding a 1959 pressing of Kinda Blue, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Daniel came to see me 2 weeks later. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, unable to meet my eyes. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into the house he'd lived in as a child, the house he'd helped steal from me, the house that was now mine again. "I don't know what to say, Dad." "That's a start." He finally looked at me. He looked older than 42, tired, defeated. The divorce papers had been filed. His job at the insurance company was uncertain, his reputation damaged by the trial coverage. Everything he'd thought he was building had turned out to be built on sand. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that's not enough. I knew what she was doing, and I didn't stop her. I told myself it didn't matter, that you had plenty of money, that you wouldn't miss it. I told myself a lot of things." "You did. Is there any way you can forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. This was my son, the boy who used to sit on my lap and learn about compound interest, the man who had cried when I gave him this house and then helped his wife steal it from me. "Daniel, I'll forgive you, eventually. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Trust isn't something you get back with an apology. It's something you have to earn." "How do I do that?" "By being someone worth trusting. By making choices that aren't about what's easiest for you. By being the man I thought you were when I handed you the keys to this house." He nodded slowly. "I want to try." "Then try. But understand something, I'm giving you one chance. One. Don't waste it on another Melissa." He left an hour later. I watched him drive away, then went back inside and set up my turntable in the living room. It took some work to get it properly positioned, but eventually the needle dropped onto vinyl, and the room filled with the sound of Miles Davis playing So What. I sat in my chair, in my house, listening to my music. Outside the sun was setting over Oakwood Drive. $180,000. That's what Melissa had taken from me, but what she'd really stolen was my faith in family, my trust in the people I loved most. I'd gotten the money back, or most of it. The house was mine again. But some things can't be recovered through court orders and legal judgments. Still, as the trumpet solo soared through my living room, I realized something. She hadn't broken me. She'd tried, and she'd failed. I was still here, still standing, still capable of recognizing a beautiful piece of music when I heard one. The vinyl crackled softly as the song faded out. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle around me. Justice had been served. Not vengeance, not cruelty, just the simple mathematical balance of actions and consequences. The numbers, as always, don't lie. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.